Shigella dysenteriae. A presentation by Nicole Berry, Reed Carmichael, Sean Connolly, Jasmine Gray, and Elizabeth Lacanana.
Organism structure. Shigella dysenteriae is gram-negative bacilli, which is non-motile, non-endospore forming, is facultatively anaerobic, and does not produce urease or hydrogen sulfide. Shigella is often mistaken for E. coli because they have similar structures and shared genes, especially those of E. coli K12, strain MG1655. Of the four species of Shigella, Shigella dysenteriae is the smallest, with 4,369,232 base pairs. It is also able to survive proteases and acids of the intestinal tract. This organism aids in the facilitation of intercellular pathogens, and while it primarily affects humans as parasites, they are able to affect apes as well.
Pathogenesis. So how does this pathogen get into the body? Well, first, the human can ingest it from contaminated water or food. Furthermore, what makes it so unique and different from the typical GI tract infections, such as salmonella, or as mentioned before, with E. coli, is that it initiates the pathogenesis process through invasion of villus cells in the large intestine and not the small intestine. And also, it's not going to pierce the intestines or pierce the blood, similar again to how salmonella would. Rather, it's going to enter through the intestinal mucosa, courtesy of Reyer's patches, which are shown in the image above. And the S. dysenteriae is going to also produce an exotoxin, which is known as Shigella, and that's what's going to produce this inflammatory response, leading to the extensive tissue damage that we'll talk about in the next slide. And that's going to, again, lead to this bleeding and the secretion of mucus. So below, we have on the left a very healthy, normal GI tract. On the right, we have a Shigella-affected GI tract. The difference is that when this pathogen invades the human body, what it causes is an incision in this GI tract and the large intestine, and what it's going to do is produce all these red spots throughout. And what that means is that there's going to be intense bleeding again, and there's going to be really a lot of tissue damage. Now, that tissue damage is again being caused by the Shigella toxin, which is one of the virulence factors. And then furthermore, as we get along further in this presentation, we'll talk a little bit about how overcrowding and poor sanitation can lead to inhabiting or being contagious with this pathogen, and how something that is really unique about this pathogen is that people who experience these effects, who are experiencing these symptoms rather, not all the time will they have this pathogen and experience symptoms. They can be asymptomatic as well. So moving along here with the virulence factors, we know that, again, it's releasing the exotoxin, Shigella. But what makes this such a unique virulence factor is that it also has the ability to interrupt protein synthesis within the target cells. And not only that, but it can act as a cytotoxin as well, which produces the pathology in the body known as necrosis or ulceration. So necrosis is basically when you have the majority or all of the cells in the tissues or organs damaged and destroyed. And then with ulceration, that ties into some studies talking about cancer. And then it also talks about how it can lead to inflammation of the mucous surface. And that was brought up by a source from UConn EDU. And what you see in this image above is that the pathogen has a very high acid tolerance. And because of this condition, it allows it to withstand the low pH. So what this means is that your body's going to spit out these gastric acids, trying to defend, trying to hold your body away from getting this pathogen. The pathogen is going to survive and sort of overtake the body's processes And the way that it's going to survive is because it can withstand the pH. Furthermore, the plasmids seen in the image allow it to attach and move around and really spread out, not just through the host cell in what could be the large intestine, but also throughout the eukaryotic cytoplasm. And then we see again the adherence to the different parts of the body. And then finally, what makes it such a deadly pathogen is that it has the ability to kill macrophages, which again is another type of the body's defenses. And what this does in response is it's going to release cytokines, which are going to produce that inflammatory response. Again, that inflammatory response was talked about in the previous slide, which is how we're going to see the red and unhealthy intestinal tract.
Disease development. Shigella dysenteriae is a causative agent most well known for causing the disease known as shigellosis. A more severe version of this disease is called bacterial dysentery, which in other words means that there is blood in stool sample that's collected. One can obtain this disease, as mentioned before, by direct contact, which can be something as simple as a handshake. Fecal oral route, which is the consumption of fecal matter that is contaminated with the bacteria, or just consumption of the bacteria via the food you eat or the water you drink. Something unique about this bacteria is that it has a very low infectious dosage rate, which means that it only takes about 10 to 200 organisms present in the food you eat or on the person that's infected to cause the disease, shigellosis. Shigella dysenteriae finds a portal of entry through the mouth or private areas, as mentioned above, pathogenesis, and spreads through the gastrointestinal tract. It then invades the villus cells of the large intestine and the intestinal mucosa. Those cells then cause an inflammatory response that causes tissue destruction. As mentioned earlier, too, the virulence factors are a big cause of that, with the release of endotoxins, heterotoxins, and the cytotoxin. And that is also the reason why one of the main side effects of this disease is abdominal pain, also diarrhea. The bacteria then find a portal of exit through the release of fecal matter. Those that are most susceptible to the disease are young children, those that like to travel, especially to third world countries where the disease might be more prevalent, those that are sexually active, those that are immunocompromised, such as those with cancer or HIV, small social groups that tend to be in close contact with one another, such as Jewish communities. Signs and symptoms of the disease, they can occur 1 to 2 days after exposure to the bacteria. These include diarrhea, and as mentioned before, it may contain blood, known as dysentery, nausea and vomiting, fever, stomach pain, the feeling to empty stool, even when there is none present. Some people may have the disease and not develop any symptoms, making this disease have the possibility to be asymptomatic. Symptoms can last up to 5 to 7 days or could last all the way up to 4 weeks, and that is especially relevant when it comes to bowel movement.
Disease spread. The most common way to become infected with Shigella is through coming in contact with a person who practices poor hygiene after using the restroom. Fecal oral transmission has a very high infection rate. Other ways that this disease is able to spread is through ingested beverages and foods that may be contaminated, accidentally swallowing recreational water that has been contaminated with stool, or through sexual interactions with an infected individual. Even though contaminated foods may look and smell normal, the food still may be contaminated by infected food handlers who did not wash their hands after using the bathroom. Vegetables can become contaminated if they are harvested from a field with sewage in it. Water sources may become contaminated if sewage runs into it or if someone with shigellosis swims in it. Flies are able to transmit the disease as well. Shigella is seen most commonly in developing nations such as South Africa and Brazil. There are 165 million cases worldwide per year and 450,000 cases in the US per year. The most important takeaway from this slide is emphasizing on the importance of practicing good hygiene and washing your hands often. Shigella is highly infectious, and it does not take many individual organisms in order to become infected. There is no particular age group that is immune from Shigella. However, infants, elders, and those with a weakened immune system are most susceptible. As far as the mortality rate goes, some strains of Shigella can have a rate up to 10 to 20%, and the most deaths occur in children under 10 years old. One reason why children under 10 are more at risk is because of toddlers that are not fully toilet trained. Family members and playmates of such children are at high risk of becoming infected. There are two different modes of transmission that can allow the spread of Shigella, which are primary and secondary. Primary contamination is the contamination of food or water. If someone were to try to intentionally infect a group of people with Shigella, then contaminating their water source would be the most efficient mode of dissemination. Secondary transmission is the result of infected stool exposure. Diarrhea liquids are highly infectious, and in a household, this can lead to attack rates being as high as 40%. An individual's stool is able to remain infectious for up to 4 weeks. To shorten the length of infection, antimicrobial treatments can be used.
Diagnosis. A doctor may suspect a shigellosis infection in a patient if they present with symptoms that include a fever, pain, and watery or bloody diarrhea. If the doctor wants to confirm the symptoms as a shigellosis infection, they will take a sample of stool, send it to the lab, and allow the bacteria to culture. After this, they will identify the bacteria and decide if it is a shigellosis infection or not. The two tests done to test for shigellosis are the stool culture test and the antigen testing for Shiga toxin. The media used to culture this microbe include EMB plates, McConkey plates, endo-agar, S6 agar, and hecto-agar. Prevention. There are many different ways to prevent a shigellosis infection. If you are in a place where shigellosis is common, such as child care centers, nursing homes, military barracks, jails, and developing countries, some ways to prevent a shigellosis infection may be brushing your teeth and drinking water from a bottle, never using tap water or hose water in developing countries, avoiding water from ponds, lakes, and untreated pools, supervising children when they are washing their hands, disposing of dirty diapers and disinfecting the changing area, and making sure that the food preparation area is clean, hands are washed, and food is properly washed and cooked. If you're in contact or near someone who has shigellosis, some ways to prevent the infection are making sure that you are washing your hands and dishes before you prepare a meal and before you eat, making sure that you are washing your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap and water, and if there is none available, then using hand sanitizer. Making sure you do not share personal items such as cups, silverware, towels, washcloths, razors, and other everyday items, and avoiding sexual contact with someone who has shigellosis. As of today, there is no current vaccine for shigellosis, but there are several in development. Scientists are making advances on creating a vaccine by studying the virulence mechanisms of Shigella and thus understanding the immune response. Scientists have found that there appears to be a degree of immunity for people who have recovered from the shigellosis infection. Treatment. For most shigellosis infections, there is no need for treatment because the body's natural defenses will fight off the infection, and the infection should pass within a week or two. The body's natural defenses include secretory LGA, phagocytosis, and normal flora. There are ways to help reduce these symptoms, which include drinking lots of water and sports drinks with electrolytes to make up for the fluid loss from the body during diarrhea, taking over-the-counter medications that has bismuth suboxyate, such as Pepto-Bismol, that will help to ease cramps and diarrhea, and taking over-the-counter pain medications such as acetaminophen that also help to ease the cramps. However, in some more severe cases, antibiotics such as azithromycin for children and ciprofloxacin for adults are used to treat the infection. And here's a list of our references.